Hey, Mama. Welcome back to the Mama Collective podcast. I'm Jamie.
And I'm Ari, and we are two moms just trying to navigate through motherhood. But today we're three. We have Perri. She is an AMFT coming from Northern California. Long story short, Perri and I actually knew each other when we were fresh. I think I was still in college at the time.
Yeah.
We had some wild days before motherhood. But today she's here to really share her experience as an AMFT. Perri, can you, in your own words, give a little bit of background about you and how you found yourself in this space?
Yeah. So let's see. Okay. So I'm a mom of two. My daughter is 3 years old, and I just had my son back in June of last year. So he's almost one. I am an associate marriage and family therapist. So navigating motherhood and, my realm in the clinical world all at the same time. And I specialize in perinatal mental health and certified through Postpartum Support International and just got that certification last year. So just exploring all these different realms and navigating motherhood and the world of being human all at the same time.
It's so good. Um, it's really interesting when you're talking, you said, like, in addition, I also got certified in perinatal mental health. Is this like
Mm-hmm.
a new certification? Because Elizabeth, if you guys didn't listen to our last episodes, or they're also coming out every Thursday of this month, she is also a professional licensed counselor in the state of Colorado. And she talked about
Mm-hmm.
getting her additional training in perinatal mood disorders. So for
Mm-hmm.
you're in California, so is this like a new certification that has come out in the last 5 years, 10 years?
Yeah.
Give us a little insight on this training.
Yeah, so Postpartum Support International, they were founded in like 1987, but they didn't start their certification until I believe like 2015. And not
Wow.
like
Wow.
in my grad school experience, we had no training in perinatal mental health. So like Postpartum Support International was like definitely my first experience with, diving into that realm of mental health.
That is so wild that I
Yeah.
mean, what, 8 years ago that
Mm-hmm.
this really started? Um, what took your interest into like studying it? Were you like, oh, now I'm a mom and I'm super interested? Or when, as you're getting your degree, you're like, wow, I really like working with women. Like, what made you kind of fall down this specific path?
Kind of all of the above, to be honest. I had my daughter in the middle of my grad school program, so I was like in the thick of like the clinical world and navigating motherhood, like first time motherhood at the same time, and really just seeing the lack of resources we had out there. And I found
Mm.
Postpartum Sport International and kind of utilized the resources personally, and then found out that they had that certification program, and I was just like, oh, I have to do this because we need more resources, we need more spaces for women to come and feel supported and safe in exploring motherhood.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. Did you personally experience postpartum depression or anxiety after?
Yes, absolutely. I would say a little bit more with my second than with my first because with my first, I was kind of like in grad school, just like keeping my head down, busy every day. Or with my second, I had a little more time and space to like integrate my experience postpartum and definitely some postpartum anxiety.
It's so interesting. Every mom of multiples that I've at least personally talked to, it's just a reminder that like every kid's different, every pregnancy is different, every birth
Mhm.
is different. Like there's always so much where like some are like, oh my gosh, I had even too this like wrecked me. We're bringing up the times, aka TikTok. We used to reference it all the time, and lately we've been really
Love
good.
that.
Um, but
Uh,
there is actually this dad actually posted this video and he's like, I'm going to get really vulnerable.
mhm.
Um, but he talked about how his first child, him and his wife, she was amazing and they had a great connection. Their marriage was great. And then their second, their baby had colic or has colic, and it
Mm.
has like built a huge wedge. And he's talking about him and his wife getting in all these arguments and all this type of stuff. Um, and he had gone to work without resolving an argument. And when he was at work, his employer was like, hey, something seems up. What's going on? And he's like, oh yeah, me and my wife got into an argument, we didn't really resolve it, things are just kind of X, Y, and Z. And he's like, don't worry, but though, I'm gonna go home, I'm gonna fix the issue, I'll come back to work tomorrow like happy. And his
Mhm.
employer's like, but you're not promised making it home, and essentially like laid this urgency
Mm.
onto him as a husband of like,
Mhm.
no, like these should have been resolved now, type of deal. But it was just really interesting of like seeing in so many different stories of so many women that I talked to and so many families that I talked to that your first pregnancy is so different from your second, and so on and so forth. So
Mhm.
when you were now in your second pregnancy, being now a licensed therapist,
Mhm.
were you able to catch things within yourself of being like, oh, I'm noticing this? Or did it take kind of your support group to kind of point those things out in you? And because I always find that curious of, someone who's um, in their profession, it's really easy to do it for other people, but when you have to reflect back onto
Mhm.
yourself, it's totally a different story. So
Mhm.
having all the tools, what was your story like on being able to just kind of reflect onto yourself of like, oh, I actually know what this is? Or did it take like a support person to really call that out in you?
Yeah, I would say it was definitely like an internal realization, but like slow to utilizing my own tools. Like I was like, yeah, I'm
Mm.
experiencing this. Okay, let me just move forward because I was processing it so much with clients in the therapeutic space that I was like, oh, I know this. I have all the tools. It's fine. I'll get through it. So it really took my partner to sit me down and be like, hey, like it sounds like something or feels like something's off. Like, hey, let's talk about it. So I had the
Mm.
internal awareness, but it definitely took something external or my partner to kind of mirror that back to me and be like, hey, let's look at this.
Yeah, to actually take action, like to
Yeah.
pause and to actually treat yourself with kindness, the same way that
Hmm.
you would have your patients pause and treat themselves and like reflect to then
Absolutely.
take action. It is
Absolutely.
so interesting, and I'm glad that actually you're in the space where you had the tools to lean back on
Hmm.
when you eventually took action. How long did it take
Yeah.
you to then come to that realization?
Honestly, like 2 weeks ago, to be honest, in this space. Yeah. I'm 10 months postpartum, yet a week ago. So it took me 10 months to really realize that and like have that realization and sit down and really do that deeper inner work that I think as a society, we don't really allow moms to do. We kind of shame them in doing that deeper exploration. So even me knowing that and having that clinical awareness is still really scary.
Yeah.
Thank you
It's
for
Yeah.
sharing that of just like
seriously.
because it's fresh and I can feel that
Mm-hmm.
because it's not something that we ever want to like shame somebody else for experiencing, but it's almost like we shame ourselves like why am I feeling this? I know
Mm-hmm.
when I was like questioning everything, it was like, but I did everything, I went to
Mm-hmm.
therapy proactively. I did this, I did that. Um, but our bodies are like changing completely. And
Absolutely.
you add in all the external factors too, like the decreased sleep, the, you know,
Mm-hmm.
like maybe it's like financial things between you and your spouse. Maybe it's
Mm-hmm.
the relationships around you that didn't show up as like you would expect. And it's just,
Mm-hmm.
it's a lot.
It's a lot, yes. And that's why I think really honing in on that in the clinical realm, what we call like the biopsychosocial approach, which is not, or if they call it holistic, integrative, whatever term you want to use, really looking at not just the mind, but the body, the environment, and the relationships, and how all those threads connect to really help
Mm.
you kind of dive into that more root cause of what's going on for you.
That's really good. I Can you say that kind of phrase again and like deep dive just a little bit into that concept, because I think
Mm-hmm.
um, mental health gets isolated a lot,
Mm-hmm.
just on like your thoughts and your feelings. Can you dive a little bit deeper into that concept?
Yeah, I think what the biopsychosocial approach really does is it helps a client connect the mind and body again. what traditional psychotherapy or talk therapy really focuses on is almost like creating a map. It's like, here's the map of your experience, here's the map of your minds. And that's great. And we want to know that. But then you walk out of the therapy office and you're like, well, I still feel the same way that I felt even having this knowledge. So it's like, how do you integrate the body into your healing and really exploring like what's going on around you? What is your relationships like? How does all of that experience show up somatically for you? And how can we like help
Mm.
move it out of the body? So I think when you take that more integrative approach, that's kind of what the focus is on. And it feels really important, especially in motherhood, because motherhood is such a physical, somatic, and emotional experience. I like to say like every cell in your body changes when you're pregnant, and then every cell in your body changes once you have that baby, and then every cell in your
Mm.
body changes again postpartum. So you're like becoming three different versions of yourself in a really short period of time. And like integrating all in that is so important.
Wow, I didn't even think about it that way. I have heard that your cells and your DNA changes as you're pregnant. Don't quote me on that, but I think I read it somewhere. Maybe I
Yeah.
saw or heard it on TikTok. I don't know, but I won't reveal my sources. I can't even remember them.
Right.
um, can
Oh.
you share, because you work with like a very I want to say like alternative practice or like
Hmm.
more holistic. Can you share what the practice focuses on and the different
Hmm.
services that they offer? And you could even mention the service for those that are in Northern California.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's kind of like what I just touched base on, this idea of like integrating the mind and body. So we call it holistic counseling, and really what it is blending like traditional talk psychotherapy or talk therapy with alternative healing modalities. So breath work, somatic movement, meditation, Reiki. We have for the center specifically, we do ketamine assisted psychotherapy, inner childhood healing, like just a lot of different modalities that help create retie that thread between the mind and the body.
How interesting. I want to
Yeah.
go. Now I'm like, I need to go.
Yeah.
I've gotten Reiki done in my life,
Mhm.
like before I got pregnant.
Mhm.
Super interesting experience, and I feel
Okay.
like I'd
Yeah.
be super interested in doing it again. But it was with this
Mhm.
like Eastern European guy in
Okay.
this random little office, and he had his like aura lights on top of me, and then he would
Yeah.
do like some massage work on top of like doing Reiki, and
Okay.
it was it was unique, but I left like so much lighter and feeling like I was
Mhm.
smiling from within. It was the weirdest best feeling.
Yeah.
And to
I
do
love
that
that.
with like after bringing children into the world, have you done it postpartum?
Yes, that's been like a big part of like me being able to re-tap into my body again and explore like, yeah, what this new version of myself is. It's a lot of like meditation, Reiki, and somatic. Really, I like to focus on somatic, like body movement. So really utilizing the breath and tapping into the nervous system.
So could you like, because all of these things are like very new. Like I've heard, so
Hmm.
someone can you explain these things a little bit deeper of
Okay. Yeah.
someone who might not know? Because for me,
Hmm.
um, especially within my faith, like when I hear all these things,
Hmm.
it's just very,
Hmm.
these spaces aren't explored because
Yeah.
there's just a lot of fear behind certain things. Some other things have like religious connections to it. So
Hmm.
could you give, because I've seen and met a lot of people who've done breath work and body movement and all this type of stuff
Hmm.
in conjunction with therapy and faith and all these things in different avenues, of a ton of different religions, a ton of different backgrounds. Can you kind of break it down to make it seem, I mean, I don't want to use the word scary, but I guess when you're
Digestible?
uneducated, yeah, or
Hmm.
just when you're uneducated and you hear a word that may be associated to something else, would help like a mom being like, wow, okay, I didn't really know. Because that's, I think for me, when I hear all these things, I'm like, wow, some of those things I have connected to people or experiences that
Hmm.
I'm not fond of. But now you're hearing it that it's used in a positive light, that I'm like, wow, I'm really curious, how can it be used for help, like specifically like the ketamine and stuff like that. Because when
Mm,
my ex-husband worked in the drug and alcohol space, and
yeah.
that was really hard for me to see, of like, okay, you're going to now give another drug to an addict, and I'm still not
Mm-hmm.
seeing these people get help and everything. So can you kind of break down, um, just making it a little more friendly for someone who might not be educated in all of these different modalities?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's an important piece to cover. For me, clinically, how I see it is it all kind of boils down to like breath work, meditation, Reiki, even like the ketamine assisted psychotherapy. What it breaks down to is like exploring your nervous system. So, really looking at through the clinical lens of how does my nervous system kind of respond to my environment. And if you think about your nervous system, it's like a computer. It turns on the day you're born and it encapsulates every experience you've ever had your whole life. And it either processes those experiences out of your body or they get stuck in them, right? So, this idea of like
Mm.
fight, fight, freeze, or safety. So, breath work allows you, meditation, things like these modalities allow you to tap into your nervous system and understand, is it my nervous system that's driving my reaction, my response, my experience, or is it my adult rational mind, right? Like, and then how to connect
Mm.
those two. So it's really kind of tapping into the body, and but I understand how some of those modalities can, like, when you don't understand or haven't had the education around them, yeah, they can come be kind of scary, new, they're different.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I.
almost like almost
Oh, you go. Ari.
taboo, you know, like
Yeah,
almost
very.
like I remember there's just certain things in certain faiths that they just tell you to stay away from
Mhm.
because it's like I'm just gonna go there. They almost say like it's the devil's work or like it's
Yeah.
like there's like could be bad spirits within what you're doing
Mhm. Mhm.
and I think it's really interesting to hear the biological breakdown of what these modalities can help with.
Mhm.
Because we hear it. I mean, like maybe my TikTok just feeds me different things, but like we hear that like our bodies store like experiences within our muscles. Like we
Yeah.
hear that, or like right now I'm seeing a chiropractor that's really focused on um, like your brain and being able to get your body out of fight or flight mode so
Mhm.
that it can
Mhm.
I like the way you described it as like it can respond in your adult rational mind rather than
Mhm.
just like your nervous system and getting
Yeah.
confused whether your nervous system is your gut telling you something or that
Mhm. Mhm.
but really having like a clear perspective
Mhm.
um, but I can
Yeah.
see why some of those might be scary, especially Reiki. Reiki is like a
Yeah.
weird, can be a weird one for people to
Yeah.
wrap their heads around. Can you
Yeah.
describe Reiki? Because also, I think there's the crazy, I don't want to say the crazy side of it, but the intense side of it that was shown on the Goop show on
Yeah.
Netflix,
Oh, I
where like
haven't
she's
seen
like,
that one.
oh, like, yeah, she was like having, it looked like she was having a full body orgasm. I don't know. And that was not the Reiki that I experienced. So if you
Yeah.
can share a little bit about that.
Well, I just want to preference with it's like really personal choice, right? Like it's a very your healing and your exploration of yourself and your body and your psyche and your experience as a human is such a deeply personal, journey. And I think like if it's not for some people, it's not for some people, and that's great. And it works really well for others. So like just having it as part of your toolbox or the option to put it in your toolbox per se, I think is really important and it can be really healing. When it comes to Reiki, I like to just like short and sweet. It's like an energy healing. It's tapping into the different energy centers of your body and allowing your nervous system to get into the parasympathetic healing state. So allowing your body to drop in and just like be at peace for a little bit because I think especially in motherhood, like we are constantly in fight or flight. We're not only thinking about our own safety and protection, but now our nervous system is scanning for our kids, right? Our kids, our future self, our kids' future self. It's like this constant scanning. And a lot of the time when we're in chronic fight or flight, our brain neurons shrink in density, and then it causes our brain not to be able to be what they call neuroplasticity, which is our ability to like learn and grow and adapt. So to like get yourself into those parasympathetic healing states is just so crucial. However you can do it, whether it's Reiki, whether it's going on a walk, like just finding what It's really, what's aligned with you and your healing path.
It's so cool. It's interesting how there's so many different avenues, and it all really comes back to getting yourself out of survival. And I think
Mm-hmm.
even kind of what you're addressing with all of these other alternative medicine options, it's really getting back to how do we get the body to feel safe?
Yeah.
Because even to it brings back, Ari was mentioning that chiropractor. I've like seen him
Mm-hmm.
before. Also, when I was in a severe car accident, I went through a brain therapy program called Saraset, which uses sound therapy to get your body out of fight or flight. So when you see a lot of your patients, is most of the time their body is in fight or flight, survival, like completely locked up, and it is the first thing. Is that really kind of the first line of defense of like, okay, how can I slowly make sure they feel safe so we can actually get to the root? And
Mm-hmm.
I guess every patient is different, but what kind of is like the technique or plan of action that you make with your clients, especially moms postpartum, to get them in that small amount of time, whether it's 60 minutes,
Mm-hmm.
90 minutes, 2 hours, to kind of see some breakthrough?
Yeah, I think you kind of like nailed it, especially for postpartum work with mothers. It's like it's not about doing this deep dive into your psyche and your attachment patterns in your childhood. Like, there's just no time for that. I would say 90% of the moms I see when they first come in are definitely in fight or flight or freeze. So, either one of those, and their nervous system is activated. So, it's always about, first addressing how can we get you into stabilization? How can we get you, I like to use the word scaffolding. Like, how can we get you some scaffolding to make you feel stable so that, you can go on your day and, experience the motherhood the way you wanted to experience it. And then, if you want to do that deeper work, here's the space we can go do that. But your body and your mind is not going to allow you to do that deeper healing work unless you are in, parasympathetic healing state, unless your nervous system feels safe, unless you feel safe in your environment.
LOL, this makes me think about like I'm paying for therapy right now. And I've been saying, I'm like, this isn't even doing anything. She's telling me things I already know.
Mm-hmm.
Probably because I'm still in survival mode.
Could be,
And I'm
could
like,
be.
she's like saying these things. Literally, me and Ari get off these like podcast interviews, and one of us will say something of like, oh, that's relevant to my life.
Yeah.
So
Oh.
no, that's really good. Ari, what are your thoughts?
I want to dive into what ketamine assisted psychotherapy is because I had never heard of that. And now that we're talking to you, and we have some other episodes planned with some LMFTs, they have brought it up as another like assistance in therapy. And I had never heard of it. I'd heard of like LSD for and obviously that's very experimental right now, but for like people who have experienced like traumatic PTSD,
Mm-hmm.
to work through that. But ketamine for postpartum, I'm wondering how, like, what's the connection, and how do you see it helping the moms?
Yeah, well, ketamine assisted psychotherapy is kind of this like new, I would say, groundbreaking treatment that really enhances the therapeutic experience. They call it a psychedelic, but ketamine is a dissociative anesthetic. And what it really does is, I kind of mentioned it before, what happens when you're in chronic stress is your neurons in your brain shrink up, and what they've seen in the research that ketamine does is it opens up the neurons and it allows for your brain to kind
Mm.
of dip into these subconscious spaces that you weren't able to because you were in fight or flight. And they
Mm.
call it like a fast acting antidepressant. So it's kind of like, maybe you're taking an SSRI for 10 years and nothing feels effective, and you go into this ketamine treatment and you're able to experience and dip into these states of consciousness that you weren't able to before. It's kind of like the short version of it.
Is it more so like are you when you take ketamine, are you first of all, how do you take it? Like, are you smoking it? Are you like, is it a pill? Like, what are those details?
There's a lot of different, there's three main kind of ways that you can do it. So it's intramuscular, intravenous, and lozenges. So the way we do it at the center, the way we're trained is lozenges.
What does that mean? Sorry.
Like a lozenge you put in your tongue and keep under your tongue until
Oh,
it melts. Yeah.
okay. Got it.
hmm
And then is it because when you say like tap into your subconscious, my brain goes to
hmm
like, are we talking, and I apologize. You
Okay.
know, I have experimented with certain things.
hmm
So I'm thinking, is this a hallucinogenic? Oh, I said that word wrong. Um, or is it like, are you coherent and there, but you're just in a deep, relaxed state that you can then tap into things a little bit easier?
Yeah, I would probably more describe it like a deep, relaxed state. So it's like a dissociative. So imagine like going into surgery and they're going to put you to sleep, but you don't fall asleep all the way. It's kind of that really relaxed
Mm.
state where you're just, your nervous system feels completely safe.
So you
That is
are like very
fascinating.
present in the moment, and when you walk out of the office, you know what you talked about.
Yeah, some people do. Some people, so how it works is it's normally like a 4 hour session. So the client, and to preface this, like you've been doing a lot of integration work before you come into the office and do the ketamine session. So you're having like 5 or 6 appointments where you're meeting with your therapist and exploring all the things that you really want to heal. And then, if you meet criteria through the psychiatrist and the MD to, take this medication, then you come into the office. It's a 3 or 4 hour session. You take the medication, and maybe for the first hour or maybe hour and a half is when you really are feeling the medicine's full effects. You kind of tap in. Most people don't talk during the sessions. It's kind of like a really internal experience. And then you kind of come out of it, and your therapist is there, and you can kind of integrate and explore that experience and what came up for you.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm curious, do you experience like in the best way also too like I've experimented with some things in college and know how you have like
Yeah.
a come down and like the following days like uh, is there kind of like a hangover effect from it, I guess?
Yeah, the research shows that most people don't have what we call like the hangover effect of maybe other psychedelics or other, substances. They've actually shown that the neurons, the way that they're able to light up and kind of re-engage lasts for like 2 weeks. So people will sometimes report in a lot of the research feeling really, good and stable and, keeping that experience that they have. Some people are able to kind of keep that throughout the weeks.
Wow,
Wow.
that is so neat.
This is so fascinating to me because I think there is, like, obviously there's the recreational use of
hmm
certain things.
hmm
Um, but then the fact that we can then turn it around to actually make it useful and make it serve a purpose, I think that's probably where it all started from, right? Like
hmm
these drugs were serving a purpose, and then we kind of lost our way as a society, and it found it being used recreationally.
hmm
But thank you for sharing that. Is there anything else that you would want to share around, like, if somebody wanted to explore ketamine assisted therapy?
I mean, just like thinking about how to wrap it back into like the postpartum PMAD like experience and how that could be useful. It's really like, um, let's see how to frame that in the right way. I think in the culture that we have, there's a really huge missing puzzle piece when it comes to postpartum care and support and for mothers and families. So when it comes to postpartum depression and anxiety, a lot of the times you go into the MD and they're gonna subscribe you an SSRI. They're gonna tell you to go to therapy, and the research shows that cognitive behavioral therapy is kind of like the top of the totem pole when it comes to postpartum, psychotherapy. But a lot of those tools have a huge missing piece, and I think it's like that body, that ability to tap into the nervous system and explore all these kind of attachment, relational stuff that you've experienced throughout your life and how it shows up in motherhood. And it feels like ketamine assisted psychotherapy can kind of help you get there. It's also fast acting. So for some people, SSRIs aren't effective, and then they're kind of left with, their own devices. So ketamine assisted psychotherapy might be something that could help them and kind of fill in those gaps that, us as a society and the medical world just haven't, found yet for postpartum mothers and families. This is just all my own clinical, it's not experience, but clinical kind of view on it. So yeah, I think it's important and could be like a huge tool in our toolboxes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there, to kind of close this out, if a mom has been seeing a therapist and this is the first time she's hearing about, like, oh my gosh, that resonates with me, of wanting to try alternative additional therapy, whether it's through
Mm-hmm.
whatever modality that looks like. I don't even, am I using modality right? For some reason it seems wrong.
Yes, you
Okay,
are. No,
thanks.
you said it right.
But like whatever it may look like, what would be like a really
Mm-hmm.
great place? Like, is there any documentaries that talk about this? I know you said it's only 8 years old for postpartum and maternal mental health.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But obviously these forms of therapy have
Mm-hmm.
probably been in use the last, little bit. Is there any books or websites, documentaries, anything that you could kind of lead a mom to, just to kind of see maybe some testimonials that really
Mm-hmm.
helped people to just start educating themselves?
Yeah, well, I always lead people back to Postpartum Support International because I feel like just their resources and the list and just like all that they have for moms and families is super important. So that's always like my go-to. And then if you want to do that kind of deeper dive into just different modalities, I feel like it's really personal. So it really depends on the client and what they're looking for. So there is a wealth of information out there about all these modalities, but for me, like I really love the somatic world. So polyvagal theory and somatic experiencing. Those are my two big ones that I feel like are super beneficial in postpartum. So Peter Levine, he's kind of like the head guy in somatic experiencing. He wrote a bunch of books about trauma and the body and, movement and healing and how that can kind of all tie into and help in addition to talk psychotherapy. So he's kind of my go-to. Karen Kleiman, she's also really big in the postpartum world and has written a lot of good books about the postpartum prenatal experience. So she's definitely on my list too.
That's so awesome. Well, we are just
Oh,
so honored to have you on. It's been really interesting. Like Ari and I both have been so fascinated of being like, wow, this is so neat. This is so great.
mhm,
Um, if you are a mom and you were sent this podcast or you came across it, maybe you've never been to a walk, we are the Mom Walk Collective. The whole goal of what we're trying to do is to give moms community to have spaces to have these conversations. So if you're looking for moms in your area, go to the momwalkcollective.com, go to the walk finder, type in your zip code, and you'll find the walk closest to you. If you don't find a walk near you, you can apply to be an ambassador, and at the first of every month, we'll send you the next steps on what that looks like. If you're looking for more resources in perinatal mental health, maternal mental health, we're going to have a bunch of resources in our show notes. We'll have Perri's information connected there as well, so you can connect to her socials. Also, every episode in the month of May is going to be with a different license counselor and or therapist, whatever state that they're in, diving into a specific topic of one way or another. So we really encourage you guys, listen to the episodes this month. You're going to learn a ton. Um, and then really fun things that we're doing as a whole in the community. We are just wanting to open up these conversations more. Having conversations like this with Perri are so eye-opening and enlightening and encouraging and hopeful, because you could be a mom that desperately needs this. So we're running a challenge for the month of May. It's called Mom Walk for Mental Health, mile a day for the month of May. We've partnered with a stroller company, and we're just encouraging to go out, walk a mile a day, post it, tag the Mom Walk Co. as well as Guava Family. And at the end of the month, we're going to give away a stroller to a mom who's completed this challenge. It's not so much about winning the stroller, but it is to bring enlightenment to this conversation that seems so silent. And one thing that I always said when I was walking through my own journey, and when I see other friends, it's the invisible illness, because you can look so fine on the outside, but on the inside there could be a whole nother reality. So we want to just bring the invisible illness to the forefront so we can actually get you the help that you need. But Perri, we are, again, thank you so much. We are so honored having your expertise, having your knowledge, you sharing, also sharing from a mother's perspective is really great. If there's any last words that you want to say to encourage mom, we would love to hear.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for having me on. I just love that there's spaces like that you guys are creating for moms and families to just feel supported and safe on this crazy, messy journey of parenting and motherhood. And yeah, I'm just like honored to be on and have this space with you, and just telling all the moms out there that, motherhood is messy and it's supposed to be, and don't be scared to, reach out for that support, because there are so many amazing resources and women and people that are there for you. So just don't give up and don't be silent. Someone's there for you.
So
Thank
good.
you so much, Perri.
Thank you guys.
Well, Mama, we love you, and we'll see you on the next episode. Love you, Mama.
Love you, Mama.